Hi everyone, it's the Practical Therapist Ellen Byros, LCSW, here to talk to you today about what emotional manipulation in a relationship looks like. So many of my clients that I see come in to me and say, I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm in this relationship. The person isn't doing anything physically to me, but yet I feel confused. I doubt myself. I am being told that I'm the one that has the problem. And so today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it might feel like if you were in a relationship with an emotional manipulator. So emotionally manipulative people engage in lots of different tactics to try to keep power and control over the person in their life that they want to keep power and control over. So I wanted to go through a few things that I assess for when someone is coming into my office and they're worried that something's going on in their relationship. They just can't pinpoint what it is. So I'm going to break these up into categories so it's sort of easier to follow. But the first thing that I'm going to assess for is verbal abuse. And I don't mean that people are being called names all the time. I mean that the person who's in my office might talk about being criticized, being told that she's stupid or he's stupid, being called fat or ugly, or some level of name calling. It doesn't necessarily have to be screaming, shouting, and those kinds of things. It can just be overt critical comments and underhanded, sneaky comments. Another type of verbal abuse, or another example of verbal abuse, is being told that no one else would want the person, that she or he couldn't make it on his own. And when I'm referring to these clients, generally speaking, it is women who are victims of emotional manipulation, and the man is the perpetrator. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't manipulative women, but for purposes of what I'm talking about today, generally speaking, it's going to be the man that's the manipulative person. Sometimes the client or the person who's being manipulated might report that she feels like there's mind games that are being played. Lying, recreating events, misinterpreting, questioning, those kinds of things. And so that's what we call in the clinical world gaslighting, which is a type of abuse that manipulative people use to make the victim feel like he or she is going crazy. So, for example, if I have a client who is being asked by the by the perpetrator, I want you to make spaghetti tonight. And my client makes spaghetti for dinner, and her partner comes home and says, "What are you talking about? I never asked you to make spaghetti. Are you sure you're okay? There must be something wrong with you. I never asked that." And so, of course, the client will then say, I swear that's what the person asked. So it becomes very confusing, and of course the victim is feeling lots of self-doubt, maybe even more self-doubt than she would normally feel. What other stuff is under verbal abuse? Well, things like denying the actions of the perpetrator. For example, if a client is questioning or asking about something, then the person who's the manipulator will deny or minimize. No, I wasn't talking to anybody at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know what you're talking about. Or no, that was just, Jake from State Farm kind of thing. So, and then one of the last things that is a clue all the time is that the woman or the victim is being told that all of the problems that are in the relationship are because of her, that she's the one that needs to be fixed. And that's something that I hear over and over and over again, that the problems aren't with the person who's actually engaging in the manipulative behavior. The problems are with the victim. And if the victim would just go get help, which, by the way, is typically what happens, then the whole relationship will be fine, and we can go back to our fantasy world of living the life that we want to. And of course, the issue here is not necessarily that the client can't benefit from some sort of counseling, but that the manipulative person is never going to take responsibility for any of the things that he or she does. And that's something that I always tell my clients is look for whether or not the person who you're in the relationship with is able to take responsibility for anything. And typically what will happen is that they will be with someone who is never wrong, who's never going to take responsibility, who doesn't see his role in anything that has gone on. So a next group of characteristics that happens in a manipulative relationship is this isolation, which if you're familiar at all with basic domestic violence, this is something that's very common. The manipulative person doesn't want to be outed, doesn't want to lose power and control, so he will systematically isolate. And what also happens is that the client, because this is not the kind of abuse where people are walking around with broken bones and black eyes and all that kind of stuff, the victim may isolate herself because she doesn't know how to explain all this. So some of the other ways that a manipulative person might isolate is by interfering with relationships with other friends, other family members, in the form of your parents don't care about you, they're giving you bad advice, why are you talking to that friend, you know, she can't keep a relationship either. And so the manipulative person is intervening in between those relationships to keep that victim isolated. Another characteristic or another accusation is saying to the victim, are you cheating on me? I'm going to accuse you of infidelity. And what that is a projection from the manipulative person, which projection, which I'll talk about in another episode, is a tool that manipulative people use. Sometimes the manipulative person might interrogate, where have you been? What have you been doing? Why didn't you answer my text? Why didn't you call me back? I couldn't track you on Life's 360, so you need to tell me where you are at all times. And I'm only asking you to do this because I love you, because I don't want anything bad to happen to you. And so this sort of sandwiching of, you know, sweetness and then jabbing and controlling and then sweetness is a way that they keep the hook into the victim. Refusing the woman the opportunity to go get a job, to volunteer, to engage in other independent activities is a very common type of isolative abuse, because again, power and control. I don't want you going off someplace where I don't know where you are, where I can't control the situation. So what happens, and I've seen this recently with several clients, is kids are growing up, they're in school, now I want to find something for myself, so I want to go back to school or I want to go back to work. And the manipulative person says, no, that's just going to mess up the whole schedule. I don't want you to do that. Don't you want to stay home with the kids? You don't have to work. I make enough money. And the person who's manipulating the situation is trying desperately to keep power and control over the situation. So that's some isolation. Another type of characteristic or abuse that goes on with emotional manipulation is threats of, I'm going to kill myself if you leave. I can't make it without you. I need you. You know everything about me. So it becomes, oh my gosh, I feel guilty. The victim feels guilty. Oh, he's right. He would never be able to make it on his own. He must love me if he wants me to be around that much. And of course, when someone threatens to kill themselves, we're going to say, shoot, I can't leave or else I'm going to be responsible for that person's death. And of course, we're not responsible if somebody wants to take their own life. The best recourse that I can offer my clients when that sort of thing happens is tell the manipulative person, if you threaten to kill yourself, I will call the police. That's how I'm going to respond to it. Another threat is, I'm going to take the kids and you're never going to see them. There is no way at all that you're going to be able to see the kids with your history of X, Y, and Z. So one of the threats that happens a lot with the clients that I see is, you've been seeing a therapist, so I'm going to go tell the judge that you're mentally ill. And they're not going to give you the kids because you've been seeing a therapist. That must mean you're crazy. And of course, because someone has been under this manipulative person's thumb for a very long time, it's easy to believe that this manipulative person may have that power in the court system. And then in very, very extreme cases, there is a threat of killing the partner, the children, pets, family, friends. That typically doesn't occur in the emotionally manipulative clients that I see. However, it is certainly a risk that we need to look for and be on the lookout for. Intimidation tactics, and this doesn't necessarily come in the form of doing anything physically to the victim, but throwing things around, destroying things that are important to the victim, slamming doors, punching holes in walls, pulling phones out of the wall, taking it out on inanimate objects, and yelling and not allowing the victim to speak. Not necessarily that the manipulative person is putting their hand over anybody's mouth, but that every time the victim tries to speak, he will shut that person down. Another type of abuse that occurs with manipulative people is a sexual abuse, a sexual coercion, insisting that we have sex. Now, interestingly, I had a client that I've been working with for a while yesterday talk about her particular manipulative partner who is manipulating her by accusing her of not wanting to have sex with him or initiating sex with him because she doesn't feel emotionally safe at this point because they're working through some of this. And so the manipulative person, is saying, well, you were basically doing me wrong because you won't initiate